Okay, so I'm still working on this larger landscape painting, and I've now switched to oil paint. So I switched to oils a little bit sooner than I normally do, and I'm gonna be working on the trees. So I've got it blocked in with the acrylic paints, just kind of some dark colors and some light colors, shadows and highlights. Now I need to add some detail. Okay, so I've got a lot of different colors on my palette here. But basically what I'm going to be doing is looking for, I've just got a lot of this reference printed out on a piece of paper here. I'm just going to be looking for basically two colors here to start. We've got the highlights in the trees, we've got the shadows in the trees. So I'm going to basically try to find that shadow color and the highlight color, mix those together, and that's pretty much it. Then I can just kind of get started. So I'm going to take some... just gonna mix some of these colors together. I've just basically got like an off-white right here. And I need to add some yellow to that. Then I can just kind of test it. Okay, so I can see that it's not as vibrant. We need it to be a little bit lighter. I'm gonna actually take some of that color, put it aside. Then I'm going to take some more white and yellow, add it to the mix. A little more white. I might take a little bit of orange. So that is kind of the highlight color that I'm looking for. Probably just put that right over here. But now I need some shadows. So for the shadows, I'll probably use this in-between color here, and I've got some chromatic black. So titanium white, cad yellow, chromatic black. I'm going to take all of that, mix it in there, get kind of a dark color, and then I'm going to pick up some orange. I'm going to add some orange into that. I'm going to get some more black. Squirt that out. So as I mix colors, I just kind of divide them up. So I'm going to leave some of that color, but then I'm going to create a new color. Pardon my always messy palette. Okay, so we have some of that color, but I want that to be a lot darker. So we're going to take more of this black. I'm going to take a little bit of magenta and more of that orange. Okay, looking pretty good. Probably get away with some yellow in that though. So I'm going to add some yellow. Alright, not bad. I'm going to stick with that. Then the last color I need is a darker color, so I'm going to take some black. Just kind of mix it over here. And I'm going to take some orange and magenta. Just a little bit of white. I'd probably just pick up some of this. I'm going to pick up some blue. Some ultramarine blue. So we've got our colors, we've got our deep shadows, our mid-range shadows, and our highlights for the trees. Now, I'm going to be using primarily two brushes, I believe. One is a small filbert brush, the other one's just kind of a wider filbert. This one is the Princeton Lunar Blender, actually, and then this one is the Princeton Shader Filbert. I'll have all of these in the description, of course. And I have some medium over here. I actually don't know if that... yeah, that medium should still be good. So basically, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to start with this highlight color. Is I'm just going to start with those highlights. And I'm not looking for a ton of detail. This painting's a little bit larger, and you know, I'm trying to get it done within a reasonable amount of time. So I actually changed my mind pretty quickly. I think that might be a little bit too light. So I'm just going to try darkening this down, just kind of an in-between. Yep, I think that's right. So what I can also always do is just take some mineral spirits, just kind of dip it on a napkin and wipe that away. Got a fresh start. Now, much better. It's more of the color I'm looking for. What I'm basically going to do is just start adding the pattern of detail on. So I'm going to start by just plopping on some color, and then I can take this smaller filbert brush and just kind of dragging that out a bit, adding some more random texture, some smaller textures. Now, as I do this, I also am going to want to add some shadows, some highlights within those shadows. And what that's going to look like is basically just going through these areas just like this, and adding some indications of pine boughs within the shadows. So we've got kind of some lighter pine boughs, some darker pine boughs. And I can take some of this darker color, wash my brush off, take some of this darker color, and I'll go right into some of that I did with the highlights and just kind of break apart some of those highlights. Pick up some more of that dark color. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I'll probably take some of this mid-range, again, this color here, and that'll probably be a better color suited for going back into these highlights. So as I kind of stand back and look at this, yeah, pattern seems to be right. It's looking good. I may end up using some brushes that have more of a point to them as well. We'll see how it goes. I'm liking this though. Again, this is not going to be super realistic detail, but when we stand back, this is a larger canvas, 24 by 36. Everything's going to look nice. So, larger details. Just kind of manipulating the brush, using it different ways, create some different looking textures. Yeah, so just like that. And if I can find a brush, I've got another brush here. Ah, here we go. Just kind of a filbert where I can get a nice solid edge to it. Larger filbert. This is a number 8 Blick. I can just pat on these details a little bit better, just some sharper lines. And that's pretty much it. I'll continue just to go through this whole area, spotting on these textures, building up the appearance of trees. And then slowly but surely, I think this will start to take shape. And you'll be able to see what I'm after here. So that's basically all I'm going to be doing, and just kind of continuing all the way across here, breaking up more of this. I would prefer to add the darks first, because sometimes it's hard to add the light or the darks into the lights. So for a tree like this back here, I'd probably just go over the top a bit with some darks prior to starting those light colors. Kind of did that the opposite way when I got started over here, but probably darks first, lights second. So as I'm working through these trees, another thing to watch me on is how I'm breaking up after I kind of get down what I'd like to have for color. I've got a little bit of white along with a bit of blue, because it's not a pure white through here. And I'm just going into these trees and basically breaking them apart with the color of the snow. So whatever's behind them, I want to start breaking them apart, and that's going to give them the appearance. I'm loading up quite a bit of paint on my brush so that it goes over the top of this. I just want to give the appearance that we can see through these trees, because of course there's a lot of holes in trees. I've talked about this in the past. Pine trees are no exception. We want to be able to see through that tree. So I'll just go through these trees, just kind of combing through them and breaking them up so that they're not so intrusive. And by just adding these specks of snow, we start to create a sense of realism into these trees. So I'm just gliding my brush lightly across. So that's another thing I'll be doing, and especially when I get up to the right, when I move towards the sky, some of these larger trees, you'll be able to see this a bit more clearly, how I break this apart. And I might have to go back and kind of add some boughs back. Yeah, that starts to look pretty good. Now, some of this can look kind of sharp, a little bit too sharp. Just wash my brush out with some mineral spirits. And then I just pick up a bit of the color of the tree. So I've got a very little amount of paint on my brush. And as I start to bounce around to these spots that I added, I can soften them up really quickly really easily. And as that softens up, it starts to look not so harsh, doesn't stand out as much. We don't want that sharp detail to be way back there. We want it to be a bit softer. So now that it's softer, I can start to play with it some more. I'm picking up some of that darker color on my brush. And so I can use that to kind of keep going. So essentially what that does, it starts to give us the idea that we can see through that tree. We're not focused on sharp little details, but we still want that appearance that those details are there. So kind of watch me on that, breaking apart these trees as well. All right, so hopefully that's looking decent. It's sometimes hard to get, especially with a larger painting now, it's hard to get the camera to pick up no glare, and we've got some glare coming in on both sides, and the color sometimes is not the best. It's just kind of hard to film in this room. But to me, this is looking just fantastic. I couldn't be happier with how these trees are coming together. I've now moved to these dark trees over here, and I was going to kind of show you how I do that, but I've got another couple set of dark trees just right over here. So I'm going to bring you back in, slow it down, and we're going to talk about these dark trees and kind of how I do those. Okay, let's paint some trees. All right, now amongst this mess, what I've got here over to the, well, my left, your right probably. This is just some of the chromatic black, and I'm going to use a little bit of magenta. This over here has got some white in it, so probably add that to the mix, but I want a little magenta into this. And then I've got some medium. I'm going to mix all that together. So it's black with a little bit of color, a little bit of reddish color. And then I'm going to go to these big old trees over here. And I'm just going to cake that color on. Cake it on. Yeah, so already it's got like a black with a little bit of attitude. All right. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some magenta and yellow together, kind of get an orange. Just a tiny amount of white. Very small amount. Probably want more orange than that, so I'll add yellow to it. All right, now I've got kind of this reddish color on my brush. And that is going to give us our tree trunks. Yeah. So we got some subtle tree trunks here now. Perfect. Now I'm going to wash my brush. And I'm actually going to set this brush down. I'm going to pick up this smaller filbert brush. And I'm going to, I've got some dark green color. This is just black and yellow mixed together. I'm actually going to mix some magenta into that. So this is more of a orangish, dark orange, greenish color, perhaps. And I'm just going to start the process. Now that might be too light. So I could take some more black. There we go. And I'm going to start the process of just spotting on some subtle pine boughs. So you can see that going over the top. And I will spend the next little while just adding these subtle pine boughs. It's super easy, actually. Because this painting's fairly large, even though these broader, simpler brush strokes aren't giving us the most detail, when we stand back, it actually looks, it's gonna look good. So, simple way to paint a nice big tree. Shaded tree. Silhouetted tree. Maybe that's the right. It's not quite silhouetted though, because we are adding detail into this. Now, as I do this, I will end up kind of protruding this color out into the mountains here. You know, basically just fine-tuning some of these outer pine boughs so we know what they look like. But that part is no different. Pretty easy. Okay, so that's really starting to take shape. It's looking very nice. All those subtle little pine bough details are really making that tree pop. But before I would call this more or less a finished tree, I need to have more light shining through it. We need to break this up a bit more. So I'm gonna take some white with a little bit of manganese blue. Of course, some medium in there. And I'm going to be careful about this. I'll start with right there. I don't want a lot through here. What I'm going to start with is actually I'm going to take this blue and I'm going to mix it with some magenta. Just like that. I'm going to start out by just adding some darker spots of light showing through. And I'm very careful about this, so I'll do that, and I'll take a step back. I mean, that's almost good right there. It doesn't take a lot. Couple more through here. Have a step back again. Yeah, that's looking good. I don't know if I want to go much further. Just kind of experimenting though. Couple more. Yep, that's it. Okay, now we've got this. The reason I didn't go with that bright color first is because I like to look like it's sort of glowing through. And I like to have soft edges, so we have that those dark holes, and if I go back over the top and just kind of go right in between in the middle of those gray holes I add a little bit of extra light coming through it. Now we've created some nice soft edges. You notice how I'm not doing every single one? We don't need it to be every one. Just some of them. So step back again. Beautiful. Like that's pretty much all we need. And I might have even gone overboard with just that. Kind of brush the paint off. And I might blend that together even more, especially this one up here. I think I could probably, now that we've got some brighter spots, I could probably get away with some very, very small, darker spots of light, just kind of around those immediate areas, just to blend that out even more. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got some beautiful spots of light coming through. And I'll take some yellow some magenta. Add it to this green mixture right here. Just basically just trying to match that color that's behind down lower. And I will do the same thing down lower in the trees as well. And I could even go darker, just grab some darker paint and basically just try to do the same thing. Show the light coming through. And you can see how all this starts to work together. And we're starting to have the appearance of a couple very nice looking trees that are kind of backlit against that light coming through. And we can see that light shining through from all these little spots. Looking good.